Hello everyone. Wanted to do a little gunsmithing video for you. Pretty simple project really. This is on a duffel cut that I decided to undertake finally after many years. I bought this Gras 1874. It's a Footman's Police carbine. I had it in other videos. It's one of my favorite guns and probably the first gun I ever bought that got me into collecting these unusual early into the 1800s type guns, and one of my favorites because of the developments of them, and I've done many videos on that in that respect. But what had happened to this firearm, it was probably a bring back at some point in its life by bring back military personnel or someone of that nature, bringing back a gun in the World War II era, probably, I would imagine, since these guns did serve clear up through World War II. Maybe someone stationed in France, since this is a French gun. But what they do on these is generally somewhere the stock gets cut off. You can see where I'm talking about. Right here, right behind the barrel band on them, usually, if it's done well. Sometimes they aren't done so well, and that can present a problem. And to repair this, I'm at the point where I'm ready to reassemble the gun, and we'll take a look and see how I did. But the cleaning rod slot, cleaning rod slides into this slot, goes down into this main part of the stock of the forearm here. So what I did is I took a piece of tube, steel tube, brass in this case, and cut it to length. And these holes had been used so much over the years that it had enlarged to about a 1/4 inch hole. So I enlarged those holes a little bit to give me some slop in the tube that I was using. And instead of relying on an accurate fit, I used the epoxy to fill in that gap to help me get a nice fit on the forestock to the main stock. I cut several grooves in the steel tubing and roughened it up with some about 120 grit sandpaper in order to lock it into place once the epoxy set. This had been in that duffel cut stage for so long though, and the only thing holding it in place was the cleaning rod, keeping it from twisting and flexing, and it had cracked out this portion of the stock also, and it was on its last legs actually. And you can see there also is a bad spot there. When they duffel cut it, it chipped it out, but we're not going to worry about that at all. That's just part of the character of the rifle. And what we had to do then also, since I was concerned about that crack holding, I made 2 pins out of about, it was about a 3-inch wood screws, 2 of them, steel wood screws, and I drilled them into the stock in 2 places opposite of the tubing that was in there. And over drilled them also. I used the tube as a guide to get them mark them, get them into the proximate position. Excuse me. Then bent them and shaped them and worked them into place. Over drilled the holes, like I say. The screw gives it a good locking mechanism with the epoxy, and I use Gras because it's one of the best firearms adhesives out there. Very slow to dry, but once it's dry, it's very good. I dyed it down black. I've got the glue, the remainder of it laying right here. You can see there was some brown in it and a little bit of black, and it ended up very black, but that's okay. It just looks like wood grain then when you get it finished. Placed the barrel into place, smooshed it in so that glue oozed out everywhere. Then over the course of the setting in period, I like to get the excess Gras off using cotton swabs and alcohol, and there's the result. As you can see, it works very well. Nice perfect seam, invisible repair basically. And I had the release agent on the barrel, and I used that as a guide also in getting them lined up correctly, and made sure that the edges were lined up flush on the exterior, the twisting motion of it, and used the barrel band actually to clamp it into place, because the barrel band goes over the barrel and holds everything together. That's how the gun is locked together, the two barrel bands. And I made sure that the cleaning rod hole was clear. You can drill them out afterwards if you have a nice long bit, which I do, but instead I just used some about 8-inch Q-tips, medical Q-tips I buy extremely cheap, with alcohol, and cleaned that out good, and then ran the cleaning rod down in several times to make sure that it was clear. So it's just a matter of being patient and careful with it as you do it. So we're ready to assemble this gun and see exactly how it came out. And an interesting side note, while we've got the gun apart, you can see some of the markings, how much this gun has been through over the years, how many times it's been apart, refinished. That's another thing. I'm not worried about saving any value. In fact, I'm probably adding value by doing this, because it's been reworked so many times, and the stock cartouches are sanded down to the point where they're unreadable. The serial number's still readable on it, as you can see there, but it's been overstamped one time in its life with the same number, probably during one of the refinishing processes. But let's go ahead, and I'm going to try and keep in frame as much as I can here. You can see the simple action on these. It's just a spring with the trigger acting as a lever on it to pull it away from the it acts as the sear on the bolt striker. So it's just a matter of dropping the action into it. So far the fit looks reasonably good on it. As you can see, this is where the cut was here. Luckily this is a short enough rifle I can work in here a little bit on it. I'm just going to do it standing up here. The only thing that holds the action into the firearm is one screw in the back going through to a plate that's underneath the trigger guard. I've already got my appropriately sized screwdriver here. I'm not going to over tighten that at all. In fact, I'm going to leave it a little loose until I get the barrel bands in place. There's no need to tighten that super tight on this gun at this time. If I go out and shoot it, I will tighten it down, snug it down. Next thing is the looks like a good fit all the way around, as good as it was, better than it was before actually. Next is the rear swivel. It's kind of a puzzle to get these on and off. It points this direction with that little decorative point, actually functional too. But we have to, this one's easy enough to get on, just slide it right over. And as you can see, when we get to this point, it's going to slip right over. The spring engages fine, so we got our length on the stock is about right, and it completely hides any showing marks, if there ever was any, by the time I got done. Looked pretty good. Sling swivel's a little bit snug. Probably got a little rust in there. I've been oiling it, working it, getting some of that goo out of there. I've had some of these old Gras rifles come in with completely locked up swing swivels. The brass and the steel just don't get along very well together over the years, but they eventually can be worked out. And this one's pretty good shape right now. Next is the puzzle of the front barrel band, and we can even see marks on it from where it was installed before, so I can get it the exact same direction. We know the points point towards each other on these. This point and this point are going to face each other, and it's just kind of a puzzle getting this back on. First of all, we have to invert it, slip it over to the sight, and roll it, slip it over the bayonet lug. Once we get it lined up, it'll slip right on. And then the spring depresses and it has a little hole that locks it up into place. And that's all that locks it into place. Well, there we go. That's all there is to the assembly on this rifle. Looks very good, and it's stronger than it ever was with those steel reinforcing pins and that good epoxy in there. I'd have no problems handling this gun now by its forestock. No problem at all. The next thing that needs to be installed is the cleaning rod. Slips right in that hole, goes right on through, so we got a nice clear hole, and this is just held in place by spring tension underneath the front band there. So there we have it. Just all that's left is to reattach the sling, and a repaired duffel cut, stronger than it has been in 100 years probably. And we're ready to go shooting. Just attaching the sling and we're off and running. So there we go. The simple repair of a duffel cut. Not that, as long as you take your time and are careful with it, it's not that intimidating of a project to accomplish. As long as the duffel cut is in a good location that's easy to do, like this one was. So thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.